com here, and thank you guys for tuning in. This is the Step Your Game Up show, and let's not talk too much. Let's get right to the ticker. First things first up, Alex Smith gets traded to the Washington Redskins. Andy Reid was looking to part ways with Alex Smith because he drafted Patrick Mahomes this past offseason, and ultimately that compelled the Kansas City Chiefs to move Alex Smith as soon as possible because they didn't want to let the situation play out for too long. And now we know now that Smith will join the Washington Redskins in exchange for a third round pick and Kendall Fuller. Kendall Fuller will help the Chiefs secondary. They struggled a little bit on the back end of their defense. Fuller will be an upgrade over Philip Gaines and Terrence Mitchell, those guys who kind of struggled at times during last season, and that's why Kansas City ultimately brought in Darrelle Revis. So Fuller will help on the back end, and then the third round pick is going to be used to upgrade some other part of the team. But this is good for both teams because now Mahomes can carry the torch in Kansas City. He's got a huge arm, can work that vertical passing game really well, which is going to give new life to this Chiefs organization who always seem to come up short in the playoffs. So maybe they'll be able to get over that hump with Mahomes. And then the Redskins, they take Alex Smith, who is completely on fire right now. He had the highest passer rating in all football last year, and he's playing better than ever. This was the perfect time to trade for Alex Smith if you're the Redskins, and which leads us to the next point. Kirk Cousins, who was Washington's starting quarterback, is now going to hit the open market. He's going to be a free agent. He can sign with any team. And right now, the inside story seems to be that the Denver Broncos and the New York Jets are in a bidding war for Kirk Cousins' services. If I was Kirk Cousins, I know I would be looking at the Denver Broncos because they have much better receivers. Even though it's been rumored that, reported, I should say, that either Demaryius Thomas or Emmanuel Sanders is going to end up getting cut by the Broncos. That's still a better receiver group than the New York Jets, who the only good playmaker they had is Robbie Anderson, and now he's got all these legal issues, and who knows what's going to happen with his future. So the even if one of those players ends up getting cut in Denver, they still are a more favorable group, and the wide receiver and quarterback positions are in direct correlation with one another. If you're a quarterback, you have to have playmakers that can bring in your passes and move the chains and convert big plays. So if you don't have that in New York, that will essentially bring down your value as a quarterback. Why would Kirk Cousins want to decrease his own chances of a big payday in the future? Should he have another contract after this next one he signs? That would just be foolish. So even though Kirk Cousins knows the offensive coordinator in New York, expect him to sign with the Broncos. John Elway was a former quarterback himself. He knows what it takes to be successful in this league. He's going to take care of Kirk Cousins and get him receivers and playmakers that can help make plays downfield. So expect Kirk Cousins to sign with the Broncos. There could be maybe a sleeper team that comes in, maybe like the Minnesota Vikings. I don't think Cousins would play for the Browns or the Bills, even though the Bills went to the playoffs last year. I just think those teams need more success continuously in order to land a big free agent like Kirk Cousins. One year going to the playoffs, if you're a free agent and you're looking at Buffalo, isn't enough to get it done. And then Cleveland, they're 1-31 the last 2 years, so you're almost guaranteed to go play for a losing team if you go with Cleveland. So even though Kirk Cousins says it's not all about money, you can tell that he wants to play for a competitor. Denver's his best shot at competing. Arizona's not there yet either, so expect him to go with the Broncos, even though Arizona actually had a better record than Denver this past year. Denver is just a few years removed removed from a Super Bowl themselves, and they still got a good defense with Von Miller and those guys who could make something happen. They're just hurting so bad for a quarterback right now, so Cousins would actually uplift them to new heights. Moving down the ticker, we got Frank Gore. Man, Gore came into the NFL in 2005. He's been in this league for 13 seasons, and he still had over 900 yards this past season. This guy just won't slow down. He's a future Hall of Famer. It's crazy to me that most running backs slow down at 30 years old just because your fast twitch muscles start to slow down. The bumps and bruises you take over playing in the league for so long start to slow you down. You just lose a step as you get older when you're a running back. But Frank Gore is 34 years old, so he's already blown past the 30 year old mark for running backs, and he just doesn't seem to be slowing down. He came out of Miami, signed with San Francisco. Now he's on the Colts. How awesome would it be to see John Lynch open the checkbook and bring Frank Gore back to San Francisco? This is a guy who got it done for the 49ers for a lot of years, and he can still provide great value at a cheap price. So if you can get a player like Frank Gore for $1.5 million, $2 million, maybe I'm not saying that's exactly what it'll be. Maybe it'll be around 3 or 4. I don't think it'll be that high, but if you can get him for like $2 million or $1.5 million, why not? That's the 49ers have a whole lot of cap space, and Gore will give you something on the ground. Yeah, as a coach, you might want to give those reps to a younger player, but to me, the NFL is a win now league, and if Frank Gore can give me more than one of the younger guys, I got to go with the best player at the position because ultimately, as a head coach, your job is about winning right now. Frank Gore can help you win some football games. John Lynch has all that money stashed away. Just sign a small contract with Frank Gore, pull the trigger on this deal. Fans will love it because you're bringing an old hero back, and it'll just be good for the culture. I think that'd be awesome to see. It maybe just is me dreaming, but you never know. Moving on, the Raiders. The Raiders, the commitment to excellence. I've always loved the Raiders. They've always been one of my favorite teams. The silver and black, the black hole, the fans, the rowdiest fans out there. Just Al Davis, who was a pioneer in this league, and just how he always battled the NFL. And there's always controversy. He was just such a rebel and an outlaw. And I just always loved everything about the Raiders. John Madden, Kenny the Snake Stabler, all those guys. So when I see that the Raiders have Derek Carr at quarterback, they have Marshawn Lynch at running back, they have Cooper and Crabtree at wide receiver. Now they got John Gruden to command all that and call the plays. Man, this team is going to be trending upward, that's for sure. And the Raiders have a very bright future. This obviously Mark Davis wants to get everything together before the team moves to Las Vegas. And hiring John Gruden was exactly the splash that they need. To me, in order for this team to take the next step, they're going to need to improve defense. Just load up on defenders around Khalil Mack and around the rest of those guys on that defensive unit, and just because we know Gruden's going to take care of the X and O's on offense because he's always been a brilliant play caller. Just load up on that defense. You have enough talent on offense to already get it done. Load up on D, clamp down, and go win some football games. And they're going to be right back up in the playoffs and probably battling out the AFC West with the Chiefs. And the Broncos will be good if they get Kirk Cousins. But man, the Raiders are really looking good right now. Better leadership than they've had in a while. They have all the pieces at the right positions, especially on offense. Now it's just about making those tweaks on the defensive side of the ball. And I think Gruden's going to end up getting it done for them. Watch out for the Oakland Raiders. They're on the come up right now. Moving down the ticker, we have Bradley Chubb. Man, Bradley Chubb is the most real deal defender coming out of college football right now. If you haven't watched any of the North Carolina State Wolfpack games, I watched a few just because this guy is a monster coming off the edge. I think he could slide inside and probably play some defensive line too, defensive tackle, I should say. He's a little light for that, but I think this guy can get it done inside or outside on the defensive line. He had 25 sacks and 54 tackles during his time in Raleigh, North Carolina. I believe he's going to end up going in the top five. He's got to be the best defender in this draft. And everybody has New York taking quarterback at two. I think that Dave Gettleman might take Bradley Chubb. And one of the reasons why is New York only had 27 sacks last year. Why draft a quarterback when Gettleman and Shermer are very, very high on Eli Manning? They know they can still get some left out of Eli Manning. So why draft a quarterback who's going to sit behind Eli Manning for a couple of years when you could draft Bradley Chubb and get him on the field right away at one of the four defensive lineman spots, at least in rotation, which I believe he'll end up being a starter somewhere, even though they got Vernon and Jason Pierre-Paul and Harrison on that defensive line. Make that other guy Chubbs and you'll be fine, or Chubb, I should say, and you'll be fine. And the Giants only had 27 sacks last year. That's not going to win you football games in the NFL. That was like the one of the worst in the league. So get Bradley Chubb, upgrade that pass rush, and you can wait a year. Gettleman can wait a year to draft a quarterback, and then you have Davis Webb too, who we don't know what he's capable of, but he did get selected, I think, in the third round. So I don't think Gettleman goes quarterback at two. I think he's going to take Chubb, and that would be a huge pick for the New York Giants. The final thing we got on the ticker tonight, it's Super Bowl week. This is what we've all been waiting for. We should have all known that the New England Patriots would be back, but it's still awesome to see such a spectacle, the pinnacle of everything in our sport. And there's nothing like playing in the Super Bowl. I haven't personally, but it's what every kid dreams about. Every football-minded kid, I should say. I've dreamed about it my whole life. Ever since I went to my first football game at like 5 years old and watched Barry Sanders rip apart the Minnesota Vikings. But continuing on, the big game Sunday, it's Brady and Belichick's eighth Super Bowl. Tom Brady has a QB rating of 95.2 in his last seven Super Bowls, so it'll be interesting if he'll be above 95.2 or below 95.2 against this tough Eagles defense. The Eagles, man, they are loaded. They're loaded at running back with Jay Ajayi and LeGarrette Blount. They're loaded at receiver with Alshon Jeffrey, Torrey Smith, and Nelson Aguilar. They're so loaded that even when Carson Wentz went down, Nick Foles came in and threw for 350 yards and three touchdowns against the Minnesota Vikings. This team throttled the Minnesota Vikings. So that's almost having you think that maybe the Eagles are the best team in football this year. They were one of the best during the regular season, and they haven't skipped a beat in the playoffs. I thought they would be a one and done without Carson Wentz. They're the exact opposite. They are still loaded, and that's just because collectively there's so much talent on their roster right now. That has to have the New England Patriots worried. But then again, the Patriots are just proven winners. They always get it done. Even not last week, a couple weeks ago against Jacksonville, their backs are against the wall and they just find a way to win. Just like against Atlanta last year in the Super Bowl, when their backs are against the wall and they find a way to win. We've seen it happen so many times before. It's just so hard to get bet against the Patriots because even though I think the Eagles have more talent on their roster, just having Tom Brady at the quarterback position, the QB spot is the most important position in pro football, has the most impact by far. Brady's by far the best quarterback, probably ever of all time. Certainly the most clutch in the playoffs and in the Super Bowl. And it's just so hard to bet against that because even though they have a lot of role players on that team, they get way more out of those players than most teams do with a roster full of superstars. So I mean, flip a coin on this one. You don't want to pick. I thought about picking before air because hey, I'm on here doing a sports update. I should pick, but this one you're gonna end up, you're probably gonna end up eating your words. You're gonna eat crow on this one because it can go either way. Um, to me, the keys of the game, obviously, the Eagles have to rattle Tom Brady. Uh, that's always the key to beating the Patriots. You got to get pressure on him. You got to hit him. You got to get knockdowns. You have to get him to force turnovers. Maybe if you can knock a few fumbles out of his hands, just get him rattled where he's out of his groove so he's just not sitting back there and picking you apart. As far as New England goes, we know Brady's going to show up most likely. It's very probable. That's what he always does. To me, New England's defense has to show up. They have to stop Ajayi. They have to stop LeGarrette Blount. And then after they stop that running game first, they have to figure out a way to stop Alshon Jeffrey, Torrey Smith, and Nelson Aguilar, which is going to be a headache because all those guys make plays. All those guys can overwhelm you, and if you start to get on your heels even a little bit, Philly can overwhelm you and take it to you. Now, do you go New England? Do you go Philly? I don't know. I'm just gonna sit back and I'm just gonna enjoy this one this year, watch it, see what happens. You know, it's gonna be a great football game. I can tell you that. And thank you guys for tuning in as always. And check out Endzone Blog at Endzone Blog NFL on Twitter for more updates. Let's have some discussions. You can follow my personal account at StillFly810 on Twitter as well. And we also have an Instagram account now. It's just Endzone Blog on Instagram. Check out endzoneblog.com. We'll have the Across the Middle podcast coming on Saturday night. So thank you guys for tuning in and have a great night.